Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate how to do functional testing in Rails. Functional testing is might also be described as controller testing. The idea here is that you're going to simulate HTTP requests to your web app and make sure your web app handles those HTTP requests in the desired fashion. In the Rails guides, they have in the Rails testing guide, they have section 8 functional tests for your controllers. They've kind of lumped, I don't know why they choose this functional test term, but Rails likes that one. But you might also just think of it as controller testing or integration testing also sometimes. So I'm gonna work with an example here. And so this is just the QuizMe app. This is kind of like the latest version of it. I am over here in my VM. I've kind of renamed it into like a demo project here. But anyway, it's all set, so I can just run it in the usual way. And you can see, I can reload this, and you can see it has stuff like a QuizMe or a quiz index page. So here's an index page of quizzes, and you can make a new quiz, or you can inspect a particular quiz. And so this is like the show page for quizzes, and you can see each quiz has some questions, and you can add questions to this quiz, or you can edit or delete or whatever the questions that are currently associated with this quiz. And you can delete quizzes, and that would also delete all their tests and stuff like that. So we got these basic kind of CRUD capabilities for both quiz and or quizzes and also questions, which are now part of quizzes. So one of the things with interpreted languages like Rails or Ruby, well, Ruby really, that is a bit of a problem for doing kind of serious software development is that they don't use a compiler like Java or C++. And if you think about the benefit you get from a compiler, well, there's probably multiple you might argue for, but the one I'm thinking of in this case is that before you can run your Java or C++ or C app, you have to compile it. And compiling does error checking, certainly syntax error checking, and sometimes even more sophisticated sort of semantic type of checking. But at any rate, it does error checking. With interpreted languages, we don't have a compilation step. Therefore, you can introduce stupid syntax errors into your code and may not notice it because you didn't have a compiler to catch it, and it may only pop up as once it's deployed and the user goes to use it, or the customer goes to use it or whatever, and then discovers, oh, you just got this dumb little error in there that you didn't notice. And so for that reason, it is become particularly important to have automated tests because they sort of fill in some of what you're losing by not having a compiler. So one of the nice, again, these functional tests are kind of nice because they're integration tests in that they kind of test a whole bunch of things all at once, and they're not that hard to write, and they kind of help. If you have a good set of them, you generally kind of feel confident that okay, things are not like totally broken, and also I don't have stupid syntax errors in there. If I have problems, they're generally more interesting. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, so functional tests is the answer. In this functional test section, they're nice enough to kind of run through a bunch of the ins and outs of it, but I know they have this kind of nice little putting it all together section here, section 8.8. And so I'm just going to run through and kind of show you how to write some of these for your own web apps. The one thing I'll mention is that I haven't done this in a little while, and I haven't done this since going to Rails 6, and I'm never quite sure what's going to be broken or somehow work weirdly differently than the last time I used it, so hopefully this won't bomb, but we'll see. Okay. So here's the code, and so the first thing we're going to do is make sure we have some fixtures, which we actually do already. And so in particular, we'll kind of focus in on quizzes initially, and maybe we'll also look a bit at the questions. So quizzes, we have one test fixture here you can see, and it's just quizzes just have a title and description. They also do have corresponding questions at the database level because of the Rails object relational mapping. That part actually gets represented over in the questions. So you can see questions reference a quiz to tell you which quiz they belong to, and then questions have their usual parts. But like I said, first we'll focus in on writing some quiz tests. And so first of all, if you want to write some functional tests, where you do them is in the controllers folder under test. So test controllers. And we can see that we have quizzes controller test here. And so this is where we're going to write our controller tests for quizzes. And so they always give you this little generated thing here with the basic test form or boilerplate. And so so we can kind of start writing tests basically in this vein. And so, for example, we'll test out the show page. Should show quiz. And we'll retrieve a quiz, our only quiz. And so retrieve that one labeled, if you recall again, that has the name 1 here. It seems to be a convention with fixtures to give them those like names 1, 2. It's kind of weird, but that's how they seem to like to do it. And so here's the magic piece. Here we're going to simulate a GET request to a particular URL, which our server is responding to. And so we'll use from the routes files, you can see we're using the path and URL helpers, so in particular the URL helper. So let me paste that in. So of course we're going to get a quiz URL, and it's our quiz we just pulled right there. Just to show you, if you, by the way, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but if you run the command Rails routes, it'll basically dump all your routes for you. Sometimes this is useful because sometimes things are not exactly clear from the routes file. But at any rate, we're looking for, here's the prefixes in the left column. Sorry, things are a little out of whack here. Here's the prefix column right here because things are wrapping. If I take it out a lot. There, okay, now things are wrapping less, so it gets easier to read. So here's the prefix column right here. So we look for, here's quiz, so that means we have a quiz path and a quiz URL thing, and you do see that there's an ID in the URI pattern, so that means this is going to have to take an argument, which can be a quiz object or quiz ID. Either one works, and so in this case, we're doing a quiz object. So, so I hope this code so far is clear. We're simulating a GET request on our quiz URL. So basically, your web app at this point should basically run as if it received a GET request for a quiz, and in particular, the quiz right here. Now we get to the assertion. So we've simulated the request, and so what sort of interesting things can we check for? Well, there are actually a lot of things we might check for, but one of the basic ones is what sort of response status did our server produce? And if it didn't produce success, then okay, I've obviously got a problem, right? So we'll at least check that it did return successfully. Now notice, even though this test isn't really carefully inspecting what's getting returned, there are things you can add to this if you want to do that. But more to my point is just if your code contained a syntax error, the test would have failed because it would have errored out. And so already this test, just doing this simple thing, is actually pretty useful because it will help you know if you have, it'll help verify that you have no syntax errors. So having finished that test, we should be able to run Rails test. And our tests all pass. We could, if you want to see what would happen if it was supposed to, I'm not actually sure what a valid one is here. I'm just going to guess error. If you want to see if this really was supposed to return an error but didn't for some reason, you would see that the test would fail because it was supposed to return an error. Expected response to be 5xx error, but instead it was 200 OK, which is success. So you can see kind of how this would work if the test failed. You would get a message like that. And notice that it's calling out test should show quiz, or, well, notice how the name gets generated here. So should show quiz was the string we did there, should show quiz. And so the name they give it is test underscore should show quiz. So it's that's basically this one. All right, let's add, we can add some more though. So I think you generally would want at least one of these tests for every single sort of thing you got. The index page is pretty easy to do. For that, you don't even need a quiz. It should just be that, right? So get quizzes URL, because again, if you looked back at the routes, which of course I've now made go away. Here's the quizzes route, and you can see it's associated with basically our index, right? So we can say get quizzes URL, and that should be testing our index page. And so now I can run Rails test, and everything should still be passing, which is good. I wasn't carefully paying attention, but there should be now an additional assertion because I added one, so it should have been 20 last time. And then, yeah, it was 20 last time. Now it's 21 because I just added one. So, okay, let's see some more. So you actually don't have to just do GET requests. You can simulate other kinds of requests too, which is especially useful. So here's a more interesting one. So this one, we should destroy a quiz. So we're going to test out destroying a quiz. And so we go ahead and we pull our quiz fixture out. And we're going to destroy that quiz fixture. And so the destroying it part, the simulated command part is right here, delete. And that's going to be quiz URL quiz. So that's our simulating the delete. Now we want to do more than just check the result response status. We'd like to make sure that the thing actually got removed. And so for that, they have this block here, this helper. I guess it's a helper method, really is what it is. And so this is, we're going to assert that there's a difference in the quiz count of -1. There should be one fewer quizzes. And then also, because this one has a special sort of response, right? I don't believe it should be rendering a page. It should be redirecting. We can confirm that by taking a quick peek at the controller to see what it's supposed to do. Oh, wrong one. Quizzes. There we go. Here's destroy for quizzes, and so you can see, yes, it redirects to the index page, is what it's supposed to do. And so we can test for that actually happened, and so we'll make sure that it redirected to quizzes. And I actually am not sure why we're checking path here as opposed to URL. I would have thought it should be URL, but whatever. We'll go with the example that they give us and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, we can try switching to URL. But I believe that should work. So we're going to test that we should destroy a quiz. We pull out our quiz. We're going to destroy it and make sure that the count of quizzes goes down as a result. And we're going to assert that it produced an HTTP redirect. Okay. Okay, yep, so it looks like it passed, so that was fine. Just curious, I'm gonna see, I really was expecting this to be redirect to a URL. Let me just see if it still works like that, because that seems like more like what it should be. Yeah, okay, so I guess it doesn't matter. I kind of like the URL one better, so I'm gonna stick with that. But anyway, so that was cool. So, and notice that we had two assertions here. So our assertion count indeed went up by 2. We both assert that our something actually got deleted and that we were redirected. We can also do these sort of tests for update. So should update a quiz. And so we'll pull out the quiz we've got. And here's our patch, simulated patch request. Again, this is an HTTP patch request. And we're going to use the quiz URL. And we're going to use our quiz. And the params we're going to pass in is going to be, we'll update the, and indeed it has a title. I'll leave it like that. I'll call it title. I'm not lying, am I? That does have a, can peek at the fixture to verify, but I think it's called title. Boop, 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 boop. Fixtures, quizzes. Yeah, title. Okay. So so we'll change the title to updated, so it'll simulate this. Notice how we're simulating the params hash as part of the request, so that's kind of handy too. If you needed to do that, that's how you do it. And then we'll assert that we got redirected to the quiz. And again, I feel like quiz URL is the one we want here. But anyway, we're getting redirected to the show page for quiz. Again, we can verify that that's what we wanted to happen on update. Redirect to quiz. Oh, okay. So it actually, this one wants you to redirect to the index. That's the behavior. So, okay, here's the thing. Well, I'm just kind of translating, what was online. But I guess at this point, you'd have to know what you wanted this thing to do. So because it's, because our code, I think our code was correct. I think what we wanted was to go to the index page. So I'm going to change that to the index page URL. But this, again, if I had left this, well, I mean, I could leave it like that, and what it'll do is this test will fail, right? And it'll tell me, oh, I'm not redirecting to the right place. Maybe the code's wrong. Like, maybe I was supposed to redirect to the quiz URL. So I'll leave that in for a minute, just for the fun of it. Now, what this reload command does is it is gonna, well, here it even says here. It's basically, we pulled an object here, right? And then we ran the patch on it, but the patch basically sent a request to our server, but the test code quiz may not reflect the fact that the database changed unless we reload it. So that means just basically re-pull this object out of the database, and so it should have changed now. And so that we can, for example, here, assert equal that the string updated matches the quiz title. So we can test that we reload our quiz, and now these things match. So that tells us that our app successfully pulled out the parameter here, saved it to the database, and that's what we wanted to do. All right, so let me, I'll run the Rails test. We do expect this to fail because I know it's different where it's redirecting to. Okay, and so sure enough, you can see this line, expected response to be a redirect to this place, but it was a redirect to this place. Which basically this is show, this is index. So, so like I said, I will just go with, I think the code was correct and the test was maybe written incorrectly, so I'll fix the test. And then now. Okay, and I think those are kind of some key examples. And so you can do, just with what I just showed you, you can do quite a lot with what you've got. I will point out, in case you're interested, there is, I think it's somewhat popular. So the Rails test API used to allow you to check a few things, and they took those things out, and then of course everybody missed them, or a bunch of people missed them, and so they made a gem. So this Rails controller testing gem is the one in particular, and the things that they took out are assigns. So you are, I'll read it. You can access instance variables that have been passed to your views. So, so for example, you can test that all of a reference to all of the posts got passed to your view in a posts variable. I guess that's what that's supposed to be saying. I think maybe this has to be a class attribute, which we've kind of gotten away from using those for our rendering. So, but anyway, it does appear that this should give you some way of figuring that out. And then maybe the one maybe I like just a little more is the assert template one, which basically allows you to check, hey, I'm checking a page, did the right view template run? So if it's supposed to be an index page, did the index page html.erb actually get rendered? Was that the one that got rendered, or was it something else? So yeah. So that's all I wanted to say about functional testing. So now you have some ability to kind of do this bigger kind of integrated simulation type of testing, which again is real useful for catching if you've accidentally, in making edits, introduced a syntax error into one of your controller methods or your views or whatever, and you didn't happen to, when you were doing development, you didn't happen to run it manually, that particular page or that particular controller action. Having tests like this, if you run them they run pretty quickly, so you can run them a lot. They will help you quickly find when you've messed that up. And again, you will have demos coming up in like a week. And so it is a very common and mostly avoidable thing that you'll show up to the demo and you'll have made a quick change right before the demo, and oops, it in a rush, you introduce some dumb little thing, and it's like when you're running the demo, the error pops up, and it's like everybody who knows anything can tell exactly what the stupid little mistake was, and it's just like, but if you have the tests, then they'll just catch it, and you can, before you have to go demo it, you'll be like, that's where I made the stupid little syntax error. Let me just go fix that and have a good demo. Okay. All right, so we'll take 5, and then we'll finish up by talking about test coverage, which is kind of like a related test topic.